All right. Okay. There we go. All right. Welcome back. Or welcome if you're new. I'm Kris. This is a video that I saw, and instantly I knew I'm doing it. I don't know what everyone else thinks. Am I glitching? I seem to be okay. Okay, so this is Nologia, the entire history of Illinois. And I don't know if you know, but I'm in Illinois. So that's why I'm interested in it. Before we get started, that thumbs up and subscribe. This is what I did. Click. Completely easy and free. If you could do that for me, helps out tremendously. If you want to throw money at the channel, it's not free. Click on that. Thanks. Donate. Request a video. Your name sponsors that video. This was me. So I took a little break from recording. And I want to record. I want to get back into it. So, without further ado, let's do.
Home to the Windy City of Chicago, Illinois. Home to the Windy City of Chicago, a buzzing center of modern America, as well as beautiful and varied geography. From the expansive prairies and rich farmland of the South to the ancient forests and access to the Great Lakes in the North, Illinois has a lot to offer. The state has also played an important role in the history of both colonial America and that of the USA, offering a unique insight into the rich history of the continent. Watch on as we explore its fascinating place in the history of America. The area of Illinois was inhabited as long ago as 10,000 years or more by an indigenous culture which lived off the resources of the rich landscape. Known as the woodland cultures, they developed more complex community structures as well as small-scale agriculture over the following millennia. They would eventually give way to the great Mississippian culture, which dominated the region from around 900 to 1500 AD. Illinois Territory was a northern outpost of this network, which stretched right down towards the Gulf of Mexico. Cahokia in southern Illinois was the largest of their cities and of apparent important spiritual significance. The Mississippian culture...
For anyone who wants to see, I went to Cahokia, did some shorts, went up to the Chiefs Mound. I don't remember how many shorts I did, but it was 5 or 6. It was really good. I want to go back. My nephew was telling me this year is 200 and... It's 200 and I'll say 20 years or 15 years, something around there, of why is the name slipping me? Marquis de Lafayette. Went up the Mississippi and got off, visited St. Louis and walked in, saw Cahokia Mounds, and went up to Kaskaskia, the original capital of Illinois, which I want to go to as well, but there's nothing there. But yeah, it's a pretty cool place. I didn't walk all of it, but there is a Stonehenge, or not a Stonehenge, I'm sorry, it's a Woodhenge. So if you know what Stonehenge is, you pretty much know what the Woodhenge is. It's really cool. There's 120 mounds, there's 80 remaining, and that's just in this area. There's some, I guess, on the other side of St. Louis. I don't remember.
Culture was part of a flourishing of native society at this time and involved the largest settlements outside the great Mesoamerican civilizations. Urban populations were supported by large-scale maize and squash production in the surrounding areas, with further refinement in tool production also increasing output. The Mississippians left some of the largest monumental architecture of pre-Columbian America.
That's the, sorry, let me go back. That is the Chiefs Mound. You walk up. It's a good walk. And then there's a little area right here you can walk back and forth. I don't think anyone was allowed up to Chief's Mound. Now, you might have been allowed up to this point and been able, because there was some like little buildings here and then up to this very top. But the mound doesn't look like much until you get on the side. And it's currently 7 stories tall. And it's a big mound. And they left in the 1500s. So you're talking, I almost said 2,000 years. You're talking 500 years of just erosion. I mean, they started building it in, 800, 700, something like that. So you look how much erosion, and it's still 7 stories tall. It would be an awesome sledding hill, by the way. It's not like a complete drop off. It does, but it would be such a sweet ass sledding hill.
Of the largest monumental architecture of pre-Columbian America. This includes Monk's Mound, which stands around the same height as the Great Pyramid of Giza and would have involved a huge output of labor. Dramatically though, and for reasons unknown, the Mississippian culture suffered a severe drop-off around 1500 AD. Their large organized societies were replaced by smaller groups of the Illinois, or Illinois Confederation, and the group from which the state got its name. This is the tribal format that the first Europeans would encounter in the form of 2 Frenchmen, Jacques Marquette and Louis Joliet. An unlikely pair, Marquette was a Jesuit missionary, with Joliet being a philosophy student turned trapper. They arrived in 1673 as part of an expedition exploring the Mississippi and Tennessee River networks in order to map it and expand the lucrative trapping business on behalf of the French crown. This video is sponsored by Forge of Empires. Step into a world of strategy iconic. Your empire where others to build prints and 130 strategy new ways of air with no animals. You'll always advance period for propelling you forward in Forge of Empires. Fur in the form of animal pelts was a gold rush industry in this period, and for more than a century following. They were used in the production of various clothing items, but beaver wool felt hats were the key item. Whilst beaver pelts were the most valuable, other animals targeted include mink, otter, lynx, and raccoon. The European market demanded fur in volume, which supported high prices and made it an attractive industry to operate in. The French, with their early dominance in the Hudson Bay area and northern regions, placed great importance on the trade. The pursuit of beaver and other animal pelts would drive much of their early exploration and contact with Native American groups in the area, also leading to the establishment of key fort networks along the Mississippi and Tennessee rivers, expanding south from the base of French operations around the Great Lakes. They would rely on local tribes initially to do the trapping, making payment in the form of provisions and weaponry, which set up a robust trade network, and one many tribes would end up competing over. The effects of this bonanza and competition it created can be seen in the Beaver Wars of 1609 to 1701. They were a series of conflicts between the powerful Iroquois Confederacy with their British and Dutch allies against the French crown and their own allied native forces. The Iroquois looked to monopolize the trade and were expanding into neighboring regions from their original home territory in New York State and attacking local tribes to achieve this. It would upend the native power balance in the region, including in Illinois, where the Illinois numbers declined to be replaced by members of the Potawatomi, Sauk, Miami, Fox, and Iowa tribes arriving from the east and north. The turbulence of the period also resulted in the migration of some groups out of the area completely. This would include the Lakota people, who would later gain great notoriety as a horse culture of the Great Plains further west, where they eventually settled. Illinois would remain part of the French Empire for the next 90 years until passing over to the British with France's disastrous loss of colonial holdings at the end of the French and Indian War in 1763. It was temporarily then annexed to Canada by the British, but with its early capture by revolutionary forces in the War of Independence, it was brought into the new U.S. fold as a county of Virginia in 1778. Following this passing around between other states, Illinois Territory was formed in 1809 and it gained statehood in 1818, making it the 21st state of the nation. These were also years of rapid demographic change in Illinois, with the population increasing from around 2,400 to 12,200 between 1800 and 1810 alone. This would create more settlements and infrastructure, changing the face of the ancient landscape as well as the relationship with the remaining native population. At this point, most of the state's European population still resided on the edges of the southern part of the territory engaged in the fur trade, with the native population inhabiting the center and north. However, this was about to change with the increasing militarization of the state and push for more government control. Fort Dearborn was established in 1803 as part of this drive on the site of present-day Chicago. A relatively simple palisade fort, which would nevertheless become important in the projection of U.S. government power in the region. This was part of a broader government push to force all remaining native groups east of the Mississippi River into Indian territory and towards the westerly plains. In doing so, freeing up states like Illinois for full Euro-American settlement, a process which would culminate with Andrew Jackson's Indian Removal Act of 1830. These tensions over land and the U.S. government's attempts to force the remaining native inhabitants out ultimately produced the last native European conflict in the state of Illinois' history. Known as Black Hawk War, after the Sauk tribal chief of the same name, it involved a migration party of around 1,000 combined Sauk, Fox, and Kickapoo tribal men, women, and children, with possibly around 500 of these fighters. The war was categorized mainly by small skirmishes with a few larger pitched battles between the two sides.
I believe the Black Hawk War was the war that Lincoln signed up for. I believe. You know what? I want to check just to make sure. Okay, I was correct. Let me get the glitch off here, maybe. Of course it wouldn't. Yes, Lincoln did sign up to fight in the Black Hawk War, volunteering as a soldier in Illinois militia, and even being elected captain of his company during the conflict in 1832. However, he did not see much combat during his service. There's a college called Black Hawk College as well.
Black Hawk's forces were ultimately harried and pursued along the Rock River until surrender. The conflict culminated with a massacre at the Battle of Bad Axe on August 2nd, 1832.
Okay, since they were talking about Black Hawk, I've never been here, but it is a place that I want to go to. But this is the Eternal Indian, sometimes called the Black Hawk statue. It's a 48-foot. I'm reading it to you as though I'm pretend it's not on the screen. It's, you know, I think it's like a 48-foot sculpture. 48-foot sculpture, I'm sorry. I think a guy named Laredo Taft, located in Loudon State Park. I think it's near the city of Oregon in northern Illinois. It's around 1911. It's perched on the Rock River. It's about 78-foot bluff overlooking the city. I'm good. I said all that without even needing any help. But I don't know what that is. Yeah, it's one of those things that I kind of want to go to. And there was something about it. Gee. It weighs 536,770 pounds. Yeah, here you go. Said to be the second largest monolithic concrete statue in the world. Oh, after the Christ Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. That's cool. Wow. How very cool. 400,000 visitors a year. I think it's like just a couple hours away from me. I'll have to go to it sometime. Okay. Back to the video.
Here, the native group was surrounded by U.S. ground forces and the arrival of a U.S. Navy gunboat which helped fire on the group crossing the river. An hours-long duck shoot of the men, women, and children ensued, with them targeted on the riverbank and as they attempted to cross. This was followed by the scalping of many of the native dead. Around 70 U.S. fatalities were experienced during the conflict, with Black Hawk's group suffering around 500. At its height, it nevertheless tied up a significant number of U.S. armed forces, demonstrating the significance of the state of Illinois to the government. With the last native resistance snuffed out, remaining land could now be parceled out and sold to Europeans. This expanded the state's population and economic base, as well as opening up a new chapter in its history. The campaigns against the tribes of Illinois would foreshadow much of the later U.S. government policy towards Native peoples. This would include the use of treaties, forced relocation, and a style of cavalry warfare designed to wear down and contain. Not only would it be strategically influential, but Black Hawk's War would also involve a number of men who would go on to play key roles in U.S. history, including 3 presidents: Abraham Lincoln, Zachary Taylor, and Jefferson Davis. Development of
Jefferson Davis served under Zachary Taylor, and ended up marrying his daughter, but in order to be able to do it, this has nothing to do with Illinois, I understand, but in order to be able to do that, Zachary Taylor did not want his daughter marrying a military guy. So Davis left the military, married her. I don't remember if they had a child. Let's just say I'm not sure. You can look that up if you really care. Sorry for I'm glitching. Jeez, what's wrong with you, Kris? Jefferson Davis ended up getting into politics. There you go. Let's see if that helps. Am I gonna come out of it? I'm still gonna glitch, aren't I? Of course. I mean, why would I not glitch?
the state would continue apace over the following decades, with the future key city of Chicago officially incorporating as a town in 1833 and a city.
Something stupid I just realized. Zachary Taylor is the 12th president. He dies after 18 to 20 months. Lincoln's assassinated. And Jefferson Davis is president of the Confederacy. And he ends up, fleeing and gets arrested and all that. Not great endings for those three people. I mean, Jefferson Davis went to jail, but ended up being a free man and living out the rest of his life. So, but he was on the opposite, on the negative aspect of how we view the presidents.
In 1837. It had convenient access to Lake Michigan for transport, and it rapidly became an important freight hub as the railways rolled out. Mining and industrial population within the state would also grow significantly, leading to the formation of the country's earliest labor movement, which would stay rooted in Chicago. The American Civil War, which would envelop the nation from 1861, saw the state of Illinois play an important role. Firmly aligned with the Union cause, its strategic position with good railway and river access saw it function as a key hub throughout the war. The rich farmland helped provide food to support the war effort, primarily corn, wheat, and meat products. Ulysses Grant would also use it as a launching point for his attempts to seize the Mississippi and Tennessee rivers, just like the French trappers nearly 200 years before him. The state made a contribution of more than 250,000 men to the Union Army, with its troops mainly fighting in the Western Theater. Not suffering any battles on its territory, Illinois was able to resume its growth fairly soon after the end of the war. Industrial expansion continued rapidly, with Chicago becoming a hub for steel production, the railways industry, and meatpacking, all of which contributed to the state's economy and a population boom. The period also saw a large influx of new migrants from Europe. Many Irish, Italian, and others made their ways to the Windy City to begin laying out the foundations of a new life, bringing their cultures and customs with them. The World Columbian Exposition, held in Chicago in 1893, which celebrated 400 years of American advances since Columbus, would demonstrate the city's ascendancy, firmly putting it on the global map as a progressive and dynamic hub.
Also, the World's Fair of 1893 was in Chicago, was the starting point for one of America's first serial killers, if you don't count the brothers. The something brothers. I said the brothers. I didn't mean that in slang. It's the brothers. No, I meant it in terms of they weren't really brothers. Oh my goodness, they went to the Cave and Rock in Southern Illinois. They killed during the Revolutionary War. Damn it. It'll come to me, I'm sure, in a little. The Harp brothers. Yeah, the Harps brothers. There you go. It'll come to me in a little bit. Came to me right away. But H.H. Holmes was operating in Chicago out of the Murder Castle. It's like a 3-story castle that he killed people in, all kinds of. He's a psychopath. The building was burned down, and there's currently a post office there. Yeah, he wasn't a good guy, and he killed. I don't know. I've heard he killed as many or as few as 3, and potentially 200,000. Not 200,000. 200, 1,000. I've heard all kinds of numbers. And he did all that and was, spoiler alert, he was hanged by the age of like 33, 32, 34, somewhere in that range.
As with the Civil War, World War I would see Illinois make a significant contribution. This included significant food supplies for the home front as well as allies in Europe, not to mention more than 350,000 Illinois men serving in the armed forces by the end of the war. Chicago yet again demonstrated its importance to the nation, turning its metalwork industries over to the war effort and helping to produce a significant amount of armaments. First for Allied forces, and then U.S. troops once the nation joined the war in 1917. The 33rd Infantry Division, known as the Prairie Division, largely recruited from Illinois State, proved themselves at key battles such as the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, which was one of the largest operations for U.S. forces. The war also accelerated the Great Migration process, which had been taking place in the U.S., involving the movement of formerly enslaved African Americans from southern parts of the country to key northern cities like Chicago to fill labor shortages in these growing industries. The U.S. emerged from World War I as an even more established powerhouse. Within a few years, a new era of prosperity would be underway with the Roaring Twenties. This was a time of renewed economic optimism, growth across industries, and a booming stock market. Chicago, with its increasingly established financial center, second only to New York, was very much in the mix of all this. New buildings sprang up alongside this wealth, as well as new styles of architecture. Alongside these heady economic times, this was also an age of prohibition. Alcohol had been outlawed with the Volstead Act in 1919, and Illinois would again find itself at the center of this new historical episode. Not least because of the prominence gained by the Chicago outfit involving Al Capone and his gang, which would play a preeminent role alongside New York in the bootlegging industry. But also due to its geographical position, just as centuries before, its access to the Great Lakes of Canada made it a hub. This time for illegal alcohol passing from a wet Canada through the porous Illinois border into the US. The economic boom years weren't to last, though. A speculative stock bubble crash brought in the Great Depression, and Illinois, like much of America, was hit hard. This included the state's many farmers who suffered from a decline in agricultural prices. The New Deal would provide some relief, kickstarting parts of the state's economy with large infrastructure projects and public building works. Soon, however, Chicago's factories would be needed again for an approaching war. World War II would explode across Europe in 1939. The USA, as with World War I, was reluctant to become a direct party in the conflict. This didn't stop them from providing huge amounts of material support to their allies, though, in the form of programs like Lend-Lease. In the early stages of the war, this involved supplies to both the Soviet Union and Britain in volume. Chicago's strong pre-existing industrial infrastructure meant it was well suited to start producing armaments and other war material, which proved crucial to the war effort. Illinois would continue as an economic powerhouse following World War II, particularly as a result of Chicago's industry, which had played such a key role. This economic boom continued to draw workers from across the country, including many African Americans from the South, as a continuation of the Great Migration. Yet, this influx also highlighted the racial divides and simmering tensions in this seemingly progressive city. Behind the facade, housing remained firmly segregated, which created neighborhoods rigidly divided along racial lines and generally the lowest quality housing stock reserved for African Americans. This is where Martin Luther King began his new wave of civil rights action in 1966, focused on economic issues, which made the city a key part of the civil rights movement. The Democratic National Convention was held in the city in 1968, in which widespread violent protests occurred. This was at the height of U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, and these scenes of violent confrontation between anti-war demonstrators and the police, broadcast around the world, helped ferment a sense of national drama and civil unrest at the time. Through the 1970s, Chicago's economic fortunes would begin to turn as deindustrialization hit the city hard. Increased globalization and the outsourcing of jobs meant many of the city's steel mills, factories, and processing plants were forced to close. This had a knock-on effect in many communities, with reduced economic prosperity and increased out-migration from the state. This led to a general period of urban decline, which persists in some areas to this day. Recovery would arrive in the form of an increased service sector and financial sector, but never fully replacing the scale of losses during the earlier period. In more recent political history, Chicago has given rise to the future President Obama, who began his senatorial career there. It would also be enveloped in a scandal the year following Obama's election as president, when Governor Rod Blagojevich would be impeached in a high-profile scandal. From the days of French trafficking and the beaver pelt gold rush, through to Chicago as the beating heart of American industry during 2 world wars, we can see the important place of Illinois in the history of the USA. A beautiful and geographically diverse state which has helped keep the nation fed, as well as made its contribution of significant political figures through the centuries. While some economic questions still remain for the state, there is little doubt over its continued important role in the future of the nation. A big thank you to Forge of Empire.
They mentioned Obama. Lincoln ran as a resident of for presidency through Springfield, but he was born in Kentucky, but he ran through Illinois. Grant, born in Ohio, lived in Galena at the time the Civil War started, went back to Galena, and ended up running for president and won through Illinois. Ronald Reagan, first native-born Illinois president, only native-born Illinois president. And then Obama moved to Chicago from Hawaii, and he won. So we've had 4 influential, whether you like or you don't like, presidents. I'll be honest. Lincoln was entertaining, like funny. Grant really didn't have much of an outgoing personality, humor-wise. Reagan, very funny. Reagan was very funny. Reagan was also an actor, so Reagan knew timing. And Obama was funny. Another thing is I was born in Peoria. And like Richard Pryor, yesterday I found out Dick Duran died, the former Chicago Bears coach. He was drafted by the Lions, Peoria native as well. He died. But Peoria is the longest serving city in Illinois. It was established in the 1600s. Give me just a second. I'll check. Okay, I was correct and incorrect. Completely forgot about it. Kaskaskia is the oldest town in Illinois and was the first state capital. It was incorporated while Illinois was still a territory, before most of the state's municipalities were established after it became a state in 1818. I said Peoria. Yes, Peoria, Illinois is the oldest cities in Illinois and the oldest permanent European settlement in the state. So it's one of the oldest, yes, and I always think it's the oldest because of the permanent European settlement. So I got it wrong, but still. And then 1673, French explorers Marquette, Jacques Marquette, and Louis Joliet. We call them Juliet and Marquette. Explored the area that would become Peoria. They LaSalle built Fort Creve Coeur in 1680, which I've been down to that area, but there's really nothing there. But anyways, I found that interesting, and so I wanted to do it, and I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. Illinois. Who would have known? Right? Well, thank you, Nologia. So until next time, have a good day, have a good night.